Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life episode 174. My name is NBZ and I'm enjoying my last weekend of freedom, Bally, before I have to get back into the workplace and start a new job.
Very exciting.
It is very exciting. It's a fun time.
What a time to be starting a new job. Yes,
I know. It's very weird. Being at home probably for, I don't know, for the rest of the year maybe, whilst learning to do a new thing.
That's what my company's been murmuring, is that we're going to be like this for quite some time. And I think that's partly because our company's decided that we've actually managed to work from home very well as an organization. So
that's good.
Could be here for a while.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yes, in the meantime, we have lots of things to talk about, video game related and as such. And yeah, we're going to talk about them. The first thing I want to remind people of is our Backlog Club, and we have decided we're going to do it in a month's time, and that will be the show coming out on the 17th of August. But that means that if people want to get their comments in about Nintendogs plus Cats, which is the game we're going to be doing, get those in by Friday or Saturday before then to the 14th, 15th. We'll remind you again next show, but we're going to get started playing Nintendogs plus Cats, give it a month or so, and then have a nice big chat about it and how it makes us feel and all those things. So, yeah, looking forward to that as a Backlog Club. The game all choked up because I'm just thinking about all these little cats I'm going to be looking after. And yeah, that'll be a good time. We also had our Patreon show go up for the new Patreon stuff. We've got some new folks signing up for Patreon, which is very cool to see. And that show is our first This Nintendo Life. We talked about PlayStation and Xbox and some other video games we've been playing on different platforms. Bally talks about Halo. Magic.
Halo.
Crazy. So yeah, go check that out on patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife. And yeah, and that's probably it for announcements up the top. Bally, what are we going to talk about in today's show?
On today's show, the first segment, we will be talking about the games that we have been playing. Our second segment is some emails. And our third segment was a Patreon suggested topic where we're going to be making like our fantasy Nintendo companies and drafting Nintendo IP in each of our companies. So look forward to that.
Absolutely. See if I can add some stakes to that. That'll be a fun thing to do. So we'll get to that in a bit, but let's kick things off with video games. Bally, look. All right. So it's been a while. It's been a long time.
This is going.
Back in February, Bally was like, I'm going to play Chrono Trigger. And I was like, yes, Chrono Trigger, Bally, here we fucking go. The greatest RPG ever made. You'll love it. You're going to burn through this thing. It's going to be great. Bally then proceeds to buy an Xbox One and forget Chrono Trigger exists. And we're now in July? So that's what? March, April, May, June, July. That's 5 months it's taken Bally to finish.
There were some hiccups along the way.
There were a lot of hiccups along the way.
20 hours. There was Final Fantasy VII.
Yes.
There was buying an Xbox. There was
Last of Us.
Last of Us Part 2. I played some games in between, let's just say.
Basically, Bally thought of every excuse to not finish Chrono Trigger, which could, to some degree, be a good thing. Like, maybe he's enjoying it so much that he doesn't want it to end. But, ostensibly, this pretty short RPG, 20-ish hours or so, taking you 5 months, Bally. So, true to form, true to John Lindemann form, because I remember back in the day of RFN, like, his long saga of, I think it took him like 2 years or something to finich Chrono Trigger. It was a running joke. But I was like, Bally, are we really going to do the same running joke? I mean, I know we're inspired by RFN, but like to this degree? I
was like, Ghost of Tsushima is the last straw. It is not happening for this game. I'm beating this game before Ghost of Tsushima came out, and I stayed up till like midnight on a work night to beat this game the day before Ghost of Tsushima came out. So that was my plan, and I did it.
So, Bally, do you like Chrono Trigger? I mean, it's taken you a while to finish it.
Well, here's the thing. I think you can really enjoy a game and think it's awesome and still not find it the most addictive. And
sure.
I think that's probably how I feel about Chrono Trigger. I think that speaks to how long it took me to beat it. But I think it's a really great game. I think it's awesome. I loved it. But yeah, there was just something, and this isn't maybe a slight as much on Chrono Trigger, but most JRPGs I do find have a lot of mental hurdles to like play more of them. And, you know, I don't, it's not my natural state of being when I'm in a game necessarily to be playing JRPGs or RPGs. And I guess my favorite JRPG, everyone knows, is Octopath. I beat that game in like 3 to 4 weeks, I think, and that's very unusual for me.
I think that's also helped by the fact that it was a new game that had just come out, right?
That
same with Final Fantasy VII, which is technically a JRPG, even though the combat isn't turn-based. But I think when something is fresh and hot and new and everyone's playing it, there is that momentum that will naturally carry you through it, as opposed to it's an older game you're personally going back to.
Yeah, totally. And like there have been a lot of things coming out this year, and there are games I want to play, and I always try and play short games alongside long games, and when I'm playing a long game and then another long game comes along, one of those is always going to get butted. And unfortunately it was Chrono Trigger for large portions of this year, but like I said, I really enjoyed this game. I played it in more or less 4 chunks where I basically play 5-6 hours, stop for a month, play another 5-6 hours, stop for a month, and that's how I kind of got to I think I beat it in like 22-23 hours, and I did do all like the side quest stuff at the end before the final boss.
Was that along the pace of Min-Max's Deepest Dive? Because that was the other thing that was happening at the time, is Min-Max were doing their Deepest Dive on Chrono Trigger, and that's kind of why you started it back in February, or something that kind of gave you a bit more momentum to start it.
Which reminds me, I need to watch the final part of that. But yeah, no, that's kind of why I started it then, and yeah, I didn't obviously keep up with them, and yeah, things just got in the way, and hey, I've beaten it. I did kind of segment it a bit alongside them, but then their final part 3 is just like the second half of the game, more or less. So I think they messed up some of the timings on that. But yeah. I think this game makes a lot of really bold choices, which I really respect. First of all, I think the art style is fantastic, and I think what's bold about it is that the pixel art, I think what makes the pixel art so strong is that the sprites are so large. I think and it's not just the sprites of the characters, but the sprites of like the environments, the trees, the buildings, this sorts of thing. The game's not scared to really zoom in the camera, as it were, and have really large sprites for enemies and the characters and the environments. And I think, obviously, this is Akira Toriyama, Dragon Ball Z, everyone loves him, and I think he does a great job with this game. Like, I really think that this sprite design is unlike anything else I've seen on anything Super Nintendo or even like Game Boy Advance related, genuinely. Like, I think it looks incredible, and I know that DS games lose a bit of their color on playing them on 3DS, which is how I played this game. I still think the color really popped. Like, I think it really stood out, and maybe that's quite surprising considering the 3DS kind of nullifies it. So I think from that perspective, it's just such a welcoming game. It's just so awesome from an artistic perspective. And then another bold choice it makes that also makes it a lot more playable is no random encounters. Like, how many JRPGs have I played where you get random encounters? And at times, random encounters can really slow down a game when you're getting from point A to B, or you're retraversing areas, especially. I think that's the thing that annoys people the most, is like, yes, I want to level up, and yes, it's important to level up to, take on the bosses necessarily, but this game doesn't have random encounters, and I think as a result of not having random encounters, they can really do some crazy maths puzzles in order to make sure that you're the right level for every stage of the game through almost planned encounters.
It just makes it so much more balanced, doesn't it? Like, it means that when you roll into a boss, you don't feel like, oh, I've got to go grind, because the game has naturally built your characters to the point where you are able to take them on. Like, it might be a bit more tricky, and you may have to come up with some different strategies, which you can talk about the combat, but like, you can definitely do a lot of different things with it. But it's just so nice, especially this game is so ahead of its time in terms of so many of its systems. Like, that is one of them. Another one is the fact that all your party members level with you, even if they're on the bench. Cough, Octopath Traveler, cough. One of my biggest complaints about that game. And like, yeah, Chrono Trigger was doing this 20 years ago, and yeah, alongside that sprite stuff, I think it's interesting you compare it to something like Final Fantasy VI, because you're right, like, the camera in that game is far more zoomed out. The sprites and the characters are much smaller on the screen, which I guess for the scope of the world is impressive in 6, but this game focuses, I guess, more on a smaller world, but it always changes because you're seeing it in different eras of time periods and things like that. So allows it to look a bit different.
I'll just focus one more point on something mechanical, and then we can talk more about like the world and the story. And I do think that the fight system is a really neat evolution on a very simple. I think the fight system in something like Final Fantasy VI, or even like an Earthbound, it's incredibly simplistic. It's like you got your magic, you got your physical attacks, you can use and it kind of like it kind of is very standard for that kind of JRPGs at the time. I think the tech system is a really natural, smart evolution on that basic mechanic where characters learn techs, and you've got like, I think you can learn like tech points from enemies, and these are separate to like standard experience points, which I think is really great. So you are still getting some benefit of mixing up your party in terms of techs, I believe. Whereas in Final Fantasy VI, it's just kind of like this one linear form of leveling for your characters, I guess. So the techs are so great because there's real unique dual techs and triple techs that are used between different party members. So you have 3 party members, and any 2 or 3 of those party members can do these dual tech things that thematically play into the character, where, for example, Marl is like an ice magic user. So she can make Chrono have a crazy ice sword attack, and that's a dual tech, for example. But hey, if you've got Frog in there as well, they can like jump off Frog with the ice sword attack and use like this crazy powerful triple tech attack. And it's like thematically fitting, like it's a great way of matching mechanics to like thematic magic users and, you know, ideas like that, where
and the party just like working together in a fight, basically.
Exactly. And a character like Frog, I think, who's one of my favorites. So my party was Chrono, Frog, and Marl for like maybe 90% of the game, or as much as you can use those characters. And I love a character like Frog, where there is such an emphasis on him, his history with the sword, the Masamune, but also he's a frog. He's got water attacks. Like, that's just a really simple thing that I'm like, yes, you want your frog to be able to use water attacks. That makes sense. Likewise, Chrono, he's got like all these crazy sword attacks like Cleave, and he's got this spinning attack that can essentially make, if you've got like a healer, like I think, is it Frog or Marl? I think Marl, you can like use an attack with Chrono and Marl that will spray healing to your whole party, essentially.
Yes, because he spins around and spins around.
So it's just this thematic way of mixing mechanics with like the magic abilities of these characters. I think it worked really well, and you really need the techs for the game. I don't think it's the most difficult game. I certainly, but near the end of the game, especially with the side quests, I was really heavy on a guide to just kind of, because the side quests, I think that would take a lot of exploration and understanding of the world to kind of work out where you're going.
Right, because some of it is going back and forward in time to change things so that you can then have a new thing in the present from the past and stuff like that, which I really like. Conceptually, I love that type of stuff. But it's tricky to figure out. Yeah,
and it really works in a way where I do think that maybe the final bosses, I did need to like think, well, okay, how do I take this person? And just to save time, I'd like look up a strategy maybe rather
There's a real cruel trick they pull with that final boss where the center thing that looks like the boss isn't actually the boss. Yeah. And it's like the one on the right or whatever. Yeah. Which is a little weird. But yeah, I remember that fight taking a little of a long time. But the other thing with the text, which is interesting, this game is so much about positioning where the enemies are in relation to where your units are. And so depending on how clustered together they are, it might be smarter to do, say, the Chrono spin move on those enemies because you'll hit them all in one.
Right, yeah.
Versus if you just do that on one enemy, it's kind of wasting your MP or whatever just because...
Yeah, I didn't think about that enough, to be honest. And maybe it's because of some of the certain moves I used weren't often like the spray moves in that way, but I could have maybe utilized them more.
It's part of the reason I used Isla in my party every single time, as much as possible. So my party was same as yours, but instead of Frog, substitute in Isla, and her and Chrono have a crazy go across the screen move where she kind of flies like Superman across the screen, and there's a certain boss, I think it's like the giant T-Rex or something, where you go across and it kills both of his hands and it hits his head in the center as well, and that move just crushed that for me. So there's certainly, like, positioning was a big deal in terms of my play style and who I chose and things like that.
Yeah. One more mechanical thing I absolutely love about this game that's related to encounters, the fact that there are also no random encounters. Encounters like a modern Final Fantasy VII remake go straight from walking around to fighting the the enemies. There's no like cut to, hey, we're now in a battle, like say, I don't know, a Pokemon, or even like Octopath Traveler, where you get like a black screen. Now we're in a battle, you know, like it just
music changes.
I
mean,
the
music changes in this, but
yeah, the music still changes, but you're going into a battle very seamlessly from walking around in the world, and I think that is such a modern thing to have with this game that is from 1995. It's crazy.
As I said, this game is so ahead of its time in so many ways, which is why when I played it in 5 years ago, 2015, I was like, Jesus, like how have more games not learned from Chrono Trigger, because it was just a trailblazer in all these aspects. It's remarkable.
World building and lore. So I've said what I think about time travel a lot on this show.
Not a fan.
And here's the thing with this game is I actually think that the game doesn't take itself too seriously to a level where the time travel kind of works. Like it's not trying to be, I don't know, like a Doctor Who where it's like, oh, and
it's not trying to explain itself and figure out paradoxes and stuff
exactly.
like that.
And there's a couple of mentions of paradoxes, and I think there's some character like Robo, I believe, at the end is like, oh, but what about this if we, and then but other than that, like it's not really talked about that, hey, if you do these things and the knock-on effects, it's actually going to cause the little science rubbish, whatever. They just kind of like scrape over it, and that's fine, and it works. And I think having a world that you are re-exploring and visiting from, you know, like this prehistoric fantasy world where it's this weird cave people living with these weird monster-like dinosaurs is very cool. And then you've got like a traditional fantasy setting, a more modern fantasy set. I think there's like three, I think, because you got like 12,000 BC, and then like 600 AD, and then 1000 AD. So it's like those like the three core, I guess, fantasy settings. Then you got like the future setting, and then also like the end of time. And I just think it's like I'm pretty sure there's like, if you match up, there's one character from each time setting, which I think
in your party,
which I think is just a really cool way of saying, hey, your party represents all these time periods throughout history, and we're going to tell you how they all link together. And sure, the story turns into like this big world-ending thing, and there's not, in terms of the grand story, I don't think there's much overly interesting about it, but I think the game does a really good job, like a game like Final Fantasy VI, like a game like Octopath. I'd even argue that it can tell some really great little short personal stories along the way. And I really, really enjoyed the personal story of a character like Frog, for example.
Yeah, Frog's a big one, for sure.
Really loved that reveal. There's some cool stuff in there. I think Robo...
How do you feel about, like, just there are reveals and twists in Chrono Trigger, that some of them I kind of knew going into it. Obviously, you a lot more... You do a much better job of shielding yourself from that stuff, just because it just goes over your head whenever you hear anyone talk about it, if it's not something you're interested in at that particular time. Were those things that you had any idea were coming, or like one of the party members you get, for example, or like something that happens near the end of the game?
So before I played Final Fantasy VII Remake, all I knew about Final Fantasy VII was that Cloud was a dude with spiky hair and used a sword in the world of Final Fantasy VII. I can pretty confidently say all my knowledge of Chrono Trigger was that Chrono was a dude with spiky hair and a sword in the world of Chrono Trigger. Maybe with a bit of time travel thrown in. I
think that probably describes your opinion on every anime in existence.
Yes. I'm pretty confident that's all I knew about Chrono Trigger. And I mean, obviously you played the game, spoke about the game on the show, and my memory for a lot of what you'd said had definitely gone, but I did obviously know it was about time travel, and that's always suggested in the title of the game. But other than that, I went in pretty clean, and was definitely pleasantly surprised by a number of the plot beats, which I won't spoil here, but I think though they're really well executed. I think that it's like there's some twists, and I like that. It's cool. And there are some darker themes to certain people's stories, which I think work. And it's just like all the characters just feel very different. And I know we've said that sort of about Final Fantasy VI. I almost felt it more with this game in a way where they felt even more different.
For me, Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VII are much more similar in terms of their cast of characters and how diverse and weird they are. I would say Chrono Trigger even more so than 7, but But yeah, it's like you've got 3 female characters, you've got a robot, you've got a frog guy, you've got an anime swords guy. Like they're all just very different from one another, and they're
really
from different places. Yeah.
And I think this is probably like my favorite sort of older JRPG experience. I guess the previous
above Earthbound, or how was it with Earthbound?
I mean, it's a way smoother game to play in many ways than Earthbound. I think it's a much. I mean, Earthbound has its own style, but I still think I probably prefer the look of Chrono Trigger a lot more.
Yeah.
I prefer the lack of. I think Earthbound's got random encounters, doesn't it? Like,
it's got like they run into you, don't they? On the map, you kind of see them, or maybe it does have random encounters. I can't quite remember.
Have both.
Well, it kind of maybe it does have both, because there's definitely the mechanic of an enemy runs into you and they die instantly.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. I don't. Earthbound is very hard to compare, but in terms of like a traditional JRPG experience, which I struggle to even kind of describe Earthbound as in many ways.
Yeah, like Earthbound's kind of just this weird thing on its own, honestly. Like, it defies a lot of kind of traditional expectations.
But I certainly can prefer it to like Final Fantasy VI. As much as I love that game, I do think Final Fantasy VI is a great game.
I always go by the idea that Final Fantasy VI to me has the far more interesting narrative, like in terms of its characters and its setup and its world and its history. I think its writing and some of that stuff gets a little weird just because it was an old translated game and hasn't really been updated since. The nice thing about the Chrono Trigger version on DS, which is the one that you've been playing, which we didn't mention, but I think people assume that, is that they had the chance to maybe update some of those things if they did have typos and bad translation things that happened in the original Super Nintendo game. But I would say that Final Fantasy VI as a story with like a core cast and villain probably is a bit stronger, whereas I think overall as a video game, Chrono Trigger for me is far superior. So.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. And then I was thinking, this came out in 1995. Could you imagine a world in which we played Chrono Trigger before Pokemon? Because when you look at like sprite design and what this game does with like its battle mechanics and everything, like Pokemon's great. I think Red, Blue are fantastic games. I think they have even stood the test of time, and I think that world almost feels even bigger. But when you're talking about like storytelling and I mean, bringing in like how colorful Chrono Trigger isn't fair because it's a Game Boy game on Pokemon. But
that's the thing, is like this is essentially back in the day. This is what console games were. So it is like comparing, I don't know, Ghost of Tsushima and Mario 3D Land, right? It's not really a favorable comparison.
Yeah. I just think it'd be really interesting what we thought of Pokemon having had experience of some of the traditional JRPGs like this game or Final Fantasy VI or even Earthbound. Like I think would have been very exciting. But
for sure,
I'm glad I finally played it. Ticked it off the games that MBZ wants Ballity playlist, which is an ever dwindling list at this stage.
Hey, you're getting there, man.
I'm getting there. But I really enjoyed it, and glad I finally played it.
Yep. I think on Twitter you said it was pretty neat, and I responded, "You lunatic! It's a goddamn masterpiece." Which
I'd call it a masterpiece for its time. I'm not sure I could. I don't know if I would claim it's like masterpiece in the same way as, I don't know, IGN masterpiece today, sort of thing. I don't know.
If IGN reviewed Chrono Trigger today, they would give it a 10. If an indie developer made Chrono Trigger, it would get a 10 today. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Like I wholeheartedly believe that, because I just think it for me it is still, because it's so ahead of its time. It just feels modern when you play it today. There's no fluff to it. There's no fat. It is just lean as an RPG. It has all the systems you want. It is a simple tale told well. Like, it is just kind of everything that I enjoy about that style of game.
I see that, and I think it stands that test a lot stronger than like Earthbound and Final Fantasy VI.
For sure,
because of those mechanics we've been over. So I buy that. I think it would review very well today. I don't know. Is it in my top echelon of games? I'm not sure. I think it's on the border. It's on the border, but it's
for
up
sure.
there.
And for me, I've always said that Chrono Trigger, like, there are other JRPGs I personally connect with more, and I'm sure that's the case for you as well. But for me, Chrono Trigger is like almost unassailable in its just pure quality. Like, it is just. I'd say I respect Chrono Trigger more than I personally love it, though I do personally love it a lot. There are other
games
that speak to me a bit more.
Yeah.
But I highly revere it.
I agree entirely with the idea that I respect this game a ton, but do I personally love it to the same degree? Maybe not quite the same degree, but yeah. And that is
fantastic.
Purely personal preference, but
absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. We also have been playing. There's a couple of new games that have come out. I've not started deep into Paper Mario. Next time on the show, I'll give you a deeper dive on Paper Mario. My very quick thoughts are: this game is a goddamn delightful, and it is charming as all hell. It looks gorgeous. It's so far it is winning me over very, very well. We'll see how the combat holds up, but at the moment, it's a fun little puzzle that I like solving and feels good. So yeah, I'll give you more in-depth impressions on Paper Mario next time, once I've actually had time to play it through. But we've both spent a bit of time with Ghost of Tsushima as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about on next month's Patreon show. We'll go a bit more in depth on the full game. But Bally, how are you feeling about Tsushima so far?
I really love Japan, if people hadn't heard about that before, and I was very excited for this game. And I think they'll nail the Japanese stuff. I think it'll feel fairly authentic. I think it'll feel very cool, very traditional feudal Japan. I'm excited about that stuff. I was concerned about how enticing the gameplay and especially the combat would be. And about 4 or 5 hours in, I am absolutely loving the combat. I can't claim that I'm doing anything particularly stealthy so far. I'm very much samurai, facing my opponent down, looking them in the eye when I kill them, kind of thing, and I am absolutely loving it. I think that the number of moves and that you have and the way that they're implemented it's a really, really incredible fight system, especially for like an open world game. It just feels very, very impressive with the stances, the skill points, the weapons that you can throw in there. It's a very satisfying game so far.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have complained about its kind of generic open worldness. And like, yeah, it is another one of those, but for me, the thing that sets it apart is it's a place I like existing in, and I really like the mechanics of it. So as opposed to something like Horizon, where the world was gorgeous in Horizon and like there was an interesting story, for me, I didn't enjoy playing Horizon. And so that's why the generic open worldness of that game grated on me a lot more. And I think it's the case where if you're into a setting, if you're into a vibe and how a game feels, then that stuff is not as important, right? Like, it kind of gives you more of an excuse to keep playing the game and stay in the world. So for me, Tsushima is hitting far harder than a traditional one of these usually does, partially because I think Sucker Punch make games that feel great to play and are, as I was talking to you, Bally, before, it feels like every single design decision made in this game, or decision made about how the game plays, is in service to the player and making them feel good and making things easy and smooth. It is the antithesis of a game like Red Dead Redemption, where it feels like you're walking through fucking sludge, and every little drawer you have to open, pick out a thing, turn it around in your hand 17 different times. It feels like Red Dead Redemption 2 is like self-masturbatory to a degree that I just distastefully hate. And it's because it just wants to show you a vision of like, look at this cinematic operatic thing, versus Tsushima's like, hey man, we're a fucking video game. You can just hit the R2 button when you're flying past a flower in a field, and somehow Jin Sakai will just pick it up. I don't know how he does it, but it just evaporates into his inventory.
But I think the game is still very cinematic and operatic in its own way. Yes. That works. Like, totally.
Like the jewels when you're facing off against people, it certainly does that vibe.
Yeah, you can emphasize gameplay and still do something cinematic operatic. I think the showdown mechanic is very well staged and looks cinematically incredible, but at the same time, from a gameplay perspective, is great. Let's time that slash. Let's let these enemies approach me and then slash them like a samurai. It looks beautiful, and like we've seen a ton of GIFs of Last of Us Part 2 with like little gameplay sequences that I think are really cool, and we're now seeing like a really neat wave of Ghost of Tsushima ones where you can just do some really clever, well-timed counter-attacking and slashing that just looks incredible.
Yeah, I think that's Sunny Legend, who he basically does these incredible GIFs mainly for Sony first-party games, and is very, very good at making games look cinematic. You see some of his stuff he does with Tifa in Final Fantasy VII, and I'm just like in awe of those GIFs. They are just remarkable. So yeah, but yeah, as I was saying, I think when you take things like picking up resources, which is just like clicking a button real quick and they kind of evaporate into your inventory.
The resources are just like have this glossy white flashing.
Yes, so they're really easy to read in the environment. Sliding down ladders, like there's one of those things in video games. I was like, okay, climb a ladder slowly, then climb it down slowly. Every time in a video, I was like, why don't you just slide down the ladder? And Sucker Punch is like, yep, you just slide down the ladder. When you call your horse, it just teleports right next to you within like 1 second. Instant healing when you press down on the D-pad. Using the wind to guide your direction, you just swipe on the touchpad and it shows you. Every single part of this game is built to make it easy to play and fun and just keep you engaged. And for me, that's like my type of video game. And though it is very like, maybe it loses something in terms of, hey, the writing's not as good and the voice acting's not like up to the level of something like a Last of Us, which is a very hard comparison to make. For me, it's a much more enjoyable video game, and like I'm already liking this way more than playing Last of Us, honestly.
And I think so far for me, the story is actually quite interesting. Like it's not, it's not top tier video game story, but it's better than serviceable, and I think that's really cool.
I think like the smaller stories of like the people you're meeting and their own personal side quests that you start going on, they're actually quite good, and I am invested in some of those, so that's pretty cool. Other thing I wanted to bring up is a lot of these games, since I guess the Batman Arkham series, have relied on the quote-unquote Batman vision, or like Witcher sense, which is like you press a button and it shows the environment in like a different way. It kind of has that in like the enemy stealth stuff where you press the touchpad and it highlights enemies in red and things like that. But there are a lot of missions in this game, as is like generic open world design, which is follow this path to find somebody, and it doesn't rely on those types of mechanics. It just makes you look at the ground, and often the path is like through a kind of area of grass and you're following foot tracks, and it kind of lets you naturally do it as a player instead of turning on a Witcher vision in order to do that. So I thought that was just a smarter way of implementing it without having this kind of, I don't know, supernatural sense that Jin somehow has or whatever, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot more next month in August on our Patreon show. Maybe we'll do a spoiler cast for it, who knows, but yeah, so far very, very good, very impressed by it. And then I have been playing Bug Fables, The Everlasting Sapling, I think is the subtitle. Which, sure, like there's the generic here's the MacGuffin we're going after, basically. So in the wake of Paper Mario and everyone being annoyed by Paper Mario not being an RPG anymore and blah, 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 I've made my peace with that, honestly. Like, I'm like, all right, fine, then they just don't want to make that. That's fine. It's okay. Nintendo Intelligent Systems, do what you like with Paper Mario. It's another one of those games in the wave of independent entries like Golf Story, like Wargroove, like Stardew Valley, where indies are going out there and being like, Nintendo doesn't want to make these old games people like anymore. How about we make one of those? So Bug Fables is basically this team's attempt at traditional Paper Mario. When I say traditional Paper Mario, I mean games in the vein of the first one on Nintendo 64 and Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door on GameCube, which is to say turn-based combat that has button presses that you activate to defend yourself or to jump on people. It's kind of the way all Mario RPGs have been, from the original Super Mario RPG on Super Nintendo all the way to the Mario and Luigi series. Paper Mario does the same thing, but this game goes so far as to have badges, which was a big deal in those games. It has, when you level up, you choose between your MP, your HP, and your medal points to see how many you can equip to yourself. It has the same kind of, you know, when Mario, I don't know if you've seen much of Thousand Year Door or the original Paper Mario, but when he attacks, when he's holding his hammer back, it does this kind of light up system. It like goes light, 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 and then on the final light is when you let go of the button and it hits. It's literally the exact same thing. So one of the characters, Kabu, who is it's like a beetle. I don't know what kind of beetle, a stag beetle. He has a horn on his head, and so his attack is basically him charging up his horn and then smashing somebody. And it's the exact same light up system of like blank, 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 and then press the button. You have V, who's a bee, and she uses a boomerang, and so boomerang can be used to knock flying enemies out of the air so that Kabu can attack them, or they can hit enemies behind, because there's positioning in this game as well. So if you have 3 enemies in a row, Kabu can only attack the enemy who's at the start of the line, whereas V and then the other character, Leaf, who uses magic, can attack any of the enemies because their weapons can go past the first line, essentially. And so from a mechanics perspective, it feels like it's picking up that Paper Mario baton and just running with it and adding a whole bunch of things. The battle system feels a bit more complicated because you have these 3 party members as opposed to Paper Mario. You have one usually plus like a support party member. That was all the kind of named characters. So you had like the ghost lady and all these other Mario characters, but who actually looked a little bit different from the design perspective and had a bit more personality to them. But this time, your entire party like levels up together, and you don't have like individual experience. They're all kind of one cohesive unit, and there's lots of little kind of twists to what types of attacks you have. You have your special moves that can do certain things like freezing enemies. Leaf, who's the moth, he can freeze an enemy, and then that will leave them incapacitated for a couple of turns. So there are certain bosses that I'm finding pretty difficult, and one of the things you have to keep in mind, the numbers tend to be pretty low. So your HP at the moment, I'm like 15 hours into the game, I'm getting close to the end, but my characters have 15 HP. Right, so you start with like 5, and then it goes up all the way up very slowly. When you level up, you can choose between getting plus 1 HP, plus 3 TP, which is your magic point, or plus 3 medal points. And so plus 1 HP is a pretty significant boost when you're talking about these kind of low numbers. It's not Final Fantasy where you're getting up into the thousands of damage and stuff like that, which means that certain enemies, when you take them on, just even regular enemies, if they hit you for like 3 damage, that's like a significant amount of damage. Like usually you would be like, oh, that's nothing, but because of the scale here and how things are working, it can be quite significant. And they do a decent job of putting save points and healing points at areas where you would need them and things like that. But there's certainly a lot of juggling of, oh boy, I need to make sure I conserve some of my mana to use it at a point where a really hard enemy comes versus just taking the hit here a couple of times. And a lot of, defending against stuff, getting your button presses timed correctly in order to block stuff. There's 2 levels of block. So there's a regular block where you'll take less damage, and then there's a super block, which means you'll take almost no damage. And it shows it in terms of, if you do a regular block, it'll just say block. If you do a super one, it'll say awesome. So you'll know exactly what the timing is. And so a lot of the game is also learning the timing of enemies, how often they attack you and things like that. But there are definitely some tough bosses where there's, I think the chapter 3 boss is this giant kind of bee flying ship type of sentry unit. And one of its moves when it gets lower down in health is to just charge at your entire party. And if you're not ready for it, because you've never seen this move before, it'll go through everybody and it'll do like 7 or 8 damage to everyone in one hit. And I was like, oh boy, like I wasn't prepared for that. So it made it so I had to redo that fight once or twice because it was a bit tricky. And I was looking up, because it felt like I was like, man, I was doing barely any damage and it was kind of tough. And there's definitely ways you get around it. As I was saying with the freezing strategy, someone mentioned online, like, okay, attack him with 2 characters, then on the last turn use Leaf with your magic to freeze him, and then he won't get to attack that turn. He'll fall to the ground, and on your next turn you can start with Kabu doing a heavy strike, which usually does 5 damage, but because they're frozen, it'll do an extra point of damage. So it was this, I found a strategy that worked, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see that there's definitely, you need to be a bit more creative with your combat and what you're doing, and sometimes you won't be able to hit an enemy, so you can pass your turn to another character. For example, if there are flying enemies in the air and you need to use V to take them down, but she's already taken her turn, you can be like, okay, Leaf, I don't want to use you this turn, I'll just give your turn to V so she can take the enemy down out the sky. So there's a lot of ability to kind of shake things up. You can change your own positioning, so your positioning matters in terms of how much defense you have. So I usually keep Kabu out in front because he has the highest defense, and keep V in the back because she gets hit quite hard, and you can twist them around to kind of get in the right position and things like that. And you get bonus things like if you are able to hit an enemy before you fight them, because they're all out on the field, you can knock into them, you can throw your boomerang at them, then you'll get 2 attacks in that first turn versus just 1. So it feels like Paper Mario, but it feels jacked up. It definitely feels like a bit more on steroids, like it's added a lot more to those systems. I should mention, I've never played the original All Thousand Year Door. All my knowledge of it comes from watching people play through it back when I was watching a bunch
on
of
N64.
Yes. Well, so Paper Mario 64 was the first one, and then you had Thousand Year Door, which was GameCube. And I've watched a full playthrough of the first game. I've seen, I think, half of Thousand Year Door. I've seen people stream it before. I've watched people play through it, so I have a good idea of what those original Paper Mario games are and why people like them. And I think part of the reason people like them is the characters, right? People like that you have these weird Mario enemies, and there's a bit of controversy recently about this interview that Tanabe did with I can't remember who, but he was talking about how Nintendo have mandated it so that you can't really change Mario enemies anymore. So you can't have like Goombella or Goombario, who were named like versions of Goombas, but like Goombella had like a ponytail and she had this ability to like spy on enemies to see their HP and stuff, and she had personality and she was her own character. She was a Goomba, but she was her own character, and it seems like Nintendo just aren't allowing that anymore. So in Origami King,
but you can stick 3 Goombas in a doctor's jacket and make him Dr. Goomba.
Make him Dr. Goomba, Dr. Baby Wario, for God's sake.
Don't like these double standards.
You're right. Yeah. I mean, that's not really a new character though, is that? Just fucking 3 Goombas in a jacket.
Well, maybe they should introduce Dr. Goomba to the Paper Mario universe.
I mean, that would be more interesting than what they're currently doing, which is, it's a Goomba, they all have to look like Goomba, and it's like, please, Nintendo, because so much of the personality of those old games was built around those characters. And so it's nice to have a game where you have these 3 core characters. There's a bit of mystery about Leaf and their past, because apparently Leaf had been around 100 years ago, because when they go to meet the Queen of the Ant Kingdom, she's Elizant II, and Leaf was like, well, Elizant I when I was alive, and it's like, oh, that was 100 years ago. So it's very interesting, that setup. There's this entire universe, they call it Bugaria, and there are the different kingdoms. There's the termite. I just got to the termite kingdom. There's the ant kingdom, which is kind of your home base, and your mission as a group of kind of a party, you're the Team Snake Mouth, and you...
What bug do you play as?
So the 3 bugs you have, I've explained, are Kabu, who's like a stag beetle,
right?
V, who is a bee, and Leaf, who is a moth.
Okay.
So you're kind of 3 characters from different kingdoms, essentially, all come together, and your team is tasked with getting all these old artifacts, basically, for the Queen. For some reason, I can't remember, blah, 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 whatever. And there's this war with the Wasp Kingdom that is going on, and the Wasps have invaded, and there are moments where, like, you're fighting against Wasp enemies, and they want to take over. And it's this cool, like, setup of... not political per se, but it's interesting to see kind of the system in which they have built out a real world here. And it's really funny because you go through this entire desert section and it's like really complicated and you get lost sometimes, and you eventually get to the Bee Kingdom, which you have to go up on this elevator to get to the hive, essentially. The hive like looks over every other kingdom, and you get to the top and you go out to this kind of outpost and you look through a telescope and you look down at the desert you've just gone through, and it's literally just like a kid's sandbox, and it's hilarious because it shows that this grand bug kingdom is literally just set in someone's garden, essentially, which is, it's kind of the Toy Story thing of like this entire huge world from the perspective of a small toy looks like this entire place, and I just love that idea.
So the fables are good in Bug Fables, and the story's quite good.
Yes, absolutely. I wouldn't say it's like anything to write home about in terms of, you know, amazing storytelling, but the writing is funny. I like the characters. I really like V. V is probably my favorite character. She's very peppy, very kind of like doesn't have time for anyone's shit. Kabu is much more stoic. He's like very honorable, and then Leaf is kind of mysterious and has like this weird past that you're not sure about. So they work really well as a triumvirate, and at the moment I'm kind of getting near the end game now, so things are ramping up a little bit in terms of difficulty. You can make the game even harder if you want. There's a medal you can equip for 0 points, which is just hard mode, and I would not want to do that, because I'm not that the game is really difficult, but I am finding it quite challenging, and I do appreciate that about it. But yeah, you definitely have to use a lot of items, and there's no point in holding on to things, right? It's like, man, I'm low on TP, I got to use this because I don't know when a save point is coming, I don't know when I'm going to be able to heal again. So a lot of it is a bit of resource management, but it's a really enjoyable combat system. The other thing that I found a little bit controversial is the art style, because when I first saw the game, I was like, I don't know if I like this. It's a little... it feels like not great art, and...
mobile gamey?
No, not mobile gamey, just a little, I don't know, unrefined, which is maybe a bit rude to say, but it didn't really fit with my taste, and I think it's definitely grown on me, and it definitely works, and it has very much the paper aesthetic. Not that this world is based in paper, but it's basically all your characters are very thin, and they have 2 sides to them, and they flip back and forth.
When you were talking about all the bugs and like the bug kingdoms, the game I thought of was like Hollow Knight and some of the representatives of like those kingdoms in that game.
Yeah, it's got a little similar vibe to that. I wouldn't say the art style is quite as clean or crisp as Hollow Knight is. It's few
games are.
Yes, for sure. But like it was a little bit of a stumbling block when I first started the game, but like you kind of get used to it, and it doesn't look bad. It's just it's not necessarily my aesthetic. So yeah. But you know what? If you're one of those people who are very annoyed by the new Paper Mario and you're not going to play it, and you're like, I don't want to support Nintendo for doing this thing that I don't want them to do, blah blah blah. That's fine. I totally get why you don't like it, but if you haven't played Bug Fables yet, it's like I think $20. Also, I should mention I got sent a review code for Bug Fables, so thank you to the developers for that. But yes, you can go get it on the eShop, and it's really good. It's just I wouldn't say it's like doing anything that particularly special. One of the nice things about it is it does kind of have dungeon puzzles as well, so almost Zelda-esque dungeon style things where each character has different abilities. Kabu has the ability to knock objects with his horn. He later on gets the ability to like crash through boulders and also dig himself underground, so you can like explore underneath areas. And then V has the ability to throw her boomerang, and you get an upgrade for the boomerang which lets you hold it in place so that you use it to kind of rotate things around, and there's lots of puzzles involving that can get a little bit janky. Like, it's not the most perfect in terms of its puzzle design. Sometimes it feels a little clunky. There's a certain stealth section I got to where I have to move this boulder around, then I have to freeze this block and make sure the enemy doesn't see me while I'm doing it, because if they spot me, then I'm out of stealth and I have to restart the section again. I need to make sure that I get everything lined up and rotate this thing with my boomerang and make sure I don't get caught the entire time, and if I get caught I'm gonna have to refreeze the thing and do it all over again. Like, I wish they had a bit more checkpointing for some of those longer puzzles that just feel a bit like, alright, fine, I keep on doing it just to get it perfectly right that first time. But I like the variety of it. It does break things up a lot more, and it means you're not just fighting enemies. You're not just going through dungeons. A lot of it is wayfinding. A lot of it is just figuring out little environmental puzzle stuff to get you from one place to the other. And yeah, it's really strong. I really like it a lot. It as a package, it is absolutely the successor to traditional Paper Mario that people wanted. Like, it follows in the footsteps of Wargroove and of Golf Story, of being a really good independent one of those. So if you are one of those people, I highly recommend it. And I've not finished it yet, but I'm getting close, and yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
How do you think the developers felt when Paper Mario Origami King was announced?
I don't know. I think to some degree it's a blessing for them, right?
Yeah, no, I kind of looked at it in a positive light, but just the timing seems impeccable.
Well, the thing is, the timing isn't actually that impeccable. It's just the timing for the Switch release, because this game technically came out on Steam last year.
Right, okay.
But for whatever reason, it didn't hit anybody's radar. And so this year with the Switch release, I think the thing that really skyrocketed it was they contacted Arlo, #1 Paper Mario fan, and gave him a review copy. And that's how I heard about it. I saw his video and I was like, what is this game? And Arlo gave it like 7 out of 7. He's like, this is the true successor to Paper Mario I've been waiting for 10 years or whatever. So I was like, oh wow, that's really high praise for this game I've never heard of before. And so that was its Switch release. So when it came out on Switch, he reviewed it, and I think that's what put it on a lot of people's radar, which is very cool. And I think now people are picking it up and discovering it, and that's great, honestly, because it deserves to be discovered. It's really, really good. So yeah. Cool. Well, I think that is going to wrap us up for segment number 1. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break chatting with you about some of your emails. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hello and welcome back to the second segment of today's show. It is time for emails. We put out that call for emails and we got a juicy bunch of emails that we did. Let me tell you, we got some good ones.
Oh yeah, very nice.
If you would like to send an email into the show, please send it to thisnintendolife@gmail.com. That is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Or you can post a comment, a question in our Discord server. That would also be hugely appreciated. Our first question is from Chariot Goblin, who says, "Hey, this Nintendo Life. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is truly the ultimate Smash Bros. Game. Nintendo has many franchises and it got me thinking about Nintendo's catalogue as a whole. My question, which Nintendo franchise would you give the ultimate installment, but with the stipulation that it would be the last game in the franchise before the franchise retires forever? In my opinion, F-Zero and Punch-Out come to mind as franchises that deserve to go out with a bang. Thanks and stay safe out there."
Very good. So thinking about this question, there are a lot of ways in which you can interpret ultimate. What does ultimate mean? I think we've talked about that a little bit in the past in terms of what, like, making an ultimate version of something. What would that encompass? And for me, it would be about taking these ideas from all the different types of games within a certain franchise and amalgamating them to some degree. And you could, in some ways, you could call Fire Emblem Awakening Fire Emblem Ultimate because it was that entry in the series that took all these characters and you could recruit all of them, and it would basically put every single idea from the franchise previously back into that one entry. And so that's...
Initially, it was also meant to be potentially the final, right?
Exactly, yeah. So this is the exact scenario that it would have been the ultimate entry, which would have been its last one, and that's why they basically just threw the kitchen sink at it. Turns out it was so successful that it continued to become one of Nintendo's top franchises. So that's a good lesson, I guess, for Nintendo in terms of some of their other dying/dead things and what they can potentially do to revive them. So that's kind of my idea of what I would think of as an ultimate video game. What about you, Bally?
Well, this idea of ultimate and it being the final, I'm like, well, this is a fantastic opportunity to get rid of Kirby forever. So let's just have an ultimate Kirby game and we can be done with Kirby and get some other 2D platformers out there that Nintendo is so good at. That would be my initial gut reaction when I saw this idea that it would be the final ever. I was like, that is an opportunity and a half.
You're basically using it as a time to kill off a franchise rather than celebrate the end of a franchise.
Yeah. And then in terms of celebration, I certainly like the idea of kind of franchises coming back from the dead, having one last shebang, and then they're out. And I would suggest something like an F-Zero game that could just have... And it's similar to like something like Mario Kart Ultimate, which is another option where you just get a huge wealth of tracks, huge wealth of characters, include story modes, mission modes, online multiplayer, this sort of thing. Just do what they've essentially done to Smash Brothers. Just include everyone. And obviously they wouldn't do that with Mario Kart because it is like one of, if not their best selling franchise. But, you know, if that's what it takes to get another F-Zero game, I think I might be up for that. You know, I think that'd be a really cool experience, especially on Switch, which is one of the more successful Nintendo consoles in the last few decades, for example. That would be very cool.
Yeah, but would you be okay with it being dead? Well, I guess it's the stupid question because you've been living with it.
Nothing is truly dead, so maybe I am jumping a bit. But if it meant that if I truly never got to play another F-Zero game again, but I got this ultimate quotes version on, say, Switch, I think I might be up for it as much as I love F-Zero, honestly. Like, I think I could probably do it. That because there's loads of other Nintendo franchises I just couldn't handle that, like, you know, 3D Mario and Zelda. Like, I just couldn't handle.
Of course not. No,
you gotta. God, they're great. I love those games, and I love them more than F-Zero. Whereas F-Zero, I'm like, I love F-Zero. I want it back, but if this is what it takes, I might be prepared to do it.
Well, the thing I was going to say is you've also been living the last 14 years as if F-Zero is dead, so
exactly.
It's not like much changes, really.
You're telling me it's going to come back from the dead for another game? Like, that's what it feels like. It's not getting killed off, it's coming back from this, so...
Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing with some of these franchises that have been left by the wayside is if we came out and gave them an ultimate installment, it almost would be I mean, obviously it would be better than what we'd been getting, but if it means that they never come back again, like, we've kind of been living that reality for the last decade or so with stuff. Even like Punch-Out, which I think was like 2009 maybe on the Wii.
Yeah.
So it's been almost a decade for that as well. And then you obviously have the sad cases of Advance Wars and other things like that. So yeah, I don't think you would say Advance Wars probably, because if you want that to come back, you probably want that to stay, right? Like, you wouldn't want to lose that forever.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, and a bit like with F-Zero, I know I had a decent idea for F-Zero on the show a few episodes ago, like an F-Zero Royale, where it is like this, and someone mentioned that this is a mode that is in Forza Horizon, where it is you race and then it's gradual knockout. I think that format would be very cool online for F-Zero. But I genuinely struggle to think about where Advance Wars could go next, and that's even someone who's not played the latter two games in that franchise, which I know introduced stuff like mecha tanks or something, and pipes and pipe bombs and all this sort of thing. So I don't know where that could go next, or if it genuinely just kind of needs a reboot, and then who knows.
Yeah, just put some anime waifus in it that worked in the past with Intelligent Systems.
Yeah, that's why I think Wargroove was so great. It's just like completely different style, but ultimately a lot of the same similar mechanics. It just felt very fresh, even though it in many ways wasn't at all, and that was very cool.
Totally. The first one I had on my list was also Kirby. I think we're on the same wavelength. Not that I want to kill Kirby, because like he's a lovable puffball. Everybody likes him.
We talk him down a lot, but there's not a whole lot of listeners who moan about it. We don't get listeners saying, "Hey, stop doing Kirby down," which I think the silent majority agree with us. I will go as far as to say,
I would say that Kirby is the most like meh franchise that Nintendo have, probably. But the thing about Kirby, and I like this idea, right? Because it's the franchise itself is very malleable, just as Kirby himself is very malleable, because he can turn into different things and he can change his shape and all that stuff. Because Kirby, if we think about an ultimate Kirby game, right? What you're saying to me is you're going to have a game that is a side-scrolling platformer with Metroidvania elements, plus a racing game where you fly on stars around a course, plus a side-scrolling platformer where he's a ball and you have to use a stylus to control him, plus a battle arena game where you fight each other with like giant weapons,
and a bit of golf,
of golf in there, and a bit of like racing DDD on a track, and like the ultimate Kirby game would be like 19 different games. It would be a hot mess, right? It could be an open world Kirby game, right? Where you just run around as Kirby, this giant open world, and you go into like arcades where you play older Kirby games, or you go on the racetrack and you can actually ride around. And
I mean, I would make it more structured, like a Nintendo Land, and it's Kirby Ultimate, and it's just
like a theme park of Kirby, basically.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Rugrats game on PlayStation. You just go around a theme park and you take place in little mini games that all have Kirby elements as a part of them. I like this idea. I also
see it's actually something I'd probably play, but then I could also celebrate the fact that Kirby was gone. It's like 2 birds, 1 stone. Like that, it'd be great.
That's so harsh. Which I don't miss. I wouldn't miss Kirby's regular games, right? Because I think
I mean, I love Rainbow Curse. I love Canvas Curse. I think they are great games. I really enjoyed those games.
Totally.
But the other experiences I've had, to be fair, I have played like the N64 version and
Crystal Shards,
Amazing Mirror, a Magic Mirror.
Yeah, Amazing Mirror, I believe so.
Amazing Mirror on Game Boy Advance, and both of those games were very vanilla. And I know I like my vanilla, but I need a bit more.
There's something that leaves
platforming
to be desired when it comes to 2D Kirby platforming. You especially see this in Smash Brothers Brawl, the single player Subspace Emissary, which kind of shows you the design that goes into Kirby levels. It's kind of the similar level of design that went into those levels, and they're very probably some of my least favorite platforming in video games is Subspace Emissary. Because it's kind of just like running, hitting enemies. There's not interesting level design per se going on. And I think the tricky thing about Kirby is that he defies level design to some extent, because he can just kind of float over everything and ignore stuff, right?
Yeah.
Which is a tricky challenge.
And you can get like very overpowered abilities that kind of blast their way through levels, and it's a very dumbed down in that sense. Like it's not great.
For sure. But I do think you could give a big last hurrah to Kirby and do him right. And then, but then the problem is, Bally, then Nintendo would have to find some other franchise to throw all their bad ideas at, so that they can churn out a new franchise game every couple of weeks or whatever it is.
Well, they're gradually creeping that way with like Yoshi, maybe.
Yeah, Yoshi was the other one I had.
Yeah,
was like, you know, Yoshi's had a good run, but most of his games are kind of building off this success, this kind of trying to reach back to the heights. And I think a couple of Nintendo franchises like this. The other one I'm thinking of is Star Fox, because it's not in a great place as Star Fox, and that could certainly have a one final bang before it goes out. But
I think Star Fox Zero might have been that game, and we just didn't know it. I think Star Fox could be gone for a very long time.
Definitely think it will be gone for a while. But you know, if you're talking about Star Fox Ultimate, you can actually throw in Zelda elements because of adventure, right? Like you can make it more of a open world run around exploration game with mechs that you fly to planets on and you go around the planet. That's potential, but
I honestly think that's where they might go with Star Fox down the line, is that more third person action adventure style of game. Because outside of Zelda, Nintendo don't really do it that much when you think about it, and it'd be quite nice to. They've kind of got other genres that they do a lot more, but the sort of third person, potentially a bit more story driven action adventure would be kind of cool.
It kind of did work for Star Fox. Star Fox Adventures is one of those games I have to go back to at some point and revisit. And
I think it's a lot rougher than you think in your head, and I'd be excited to see your reaction if you play through it.
I kind of wasted my months in Edinburgh because I literally had my GameCube sitting right next to me with a copy of Star Fox Adventures sitting right there, and I never booted it up. So maybe that says more than any of my kind of conceptions of ever playing it do.
I didn't know it was on your list to get played.
Yeah, it never happened. So that probably speaks for itself. But that would be an interesting twist on it. But I compare Yoshi and Star Fox because they're kind of the same ilk in terms of there was this one groundbreaking game, and every subsequent entry has tried to ape it or do it again or try to recapture it, and none of those entries have kind of managed to do the same, right? You've got Yoshi's Island, you've got Star Fox 64, and both of these kind of paragons of like Nintendo classic lineup, and every subsequent entry has been disappointing as a result. So so I don't know what you do with an Ultimate Yoshi game, but I don't know. The last one I would throw out is Wario Land. Not because I never want to see Wario Land again, but can we just get another one? Maybe this is the only way. Is just you have to have the greatest final one, and then it's dead, and it dies a slow death.
We've said it before, but like Nintendo, they love Yoshi and Kirby for their 2D platforming when the real kings are Wario and DK. And
the big boys.
Travesty. They're the big
Nintendo
boys.
relies on their cute and comfortable and marketable, let's say, characters who they can sell giant plushies of. Speaking of which, I literally have a Yoshi plushie sitting on my PS4. Don't have a Wario plushie, do I? Don't have a DK plushie. So, you know, marketing, franchising.
I just want a big grizzly ape and a fat man, you know. I don't need my cute dinosaur and pink blob, you know.
Exactly. We're here for the hardcore. We're back in 2004 Nintendo. We're here to kick ass and take names, as Reggie so often like to say. We're not. We don't care about cute things at all. Definitely not. No, of course not. No, I mean, yeah, it's a bummer, but you know what? If it's gonna go out, if they're gonna do an Ultimate Wario Land game that here's what I really want, is I just want that Good Feel art style in HD. That's all I want, honestly.
Yeah.
And
what was
that
Good Feel's last game?
It was Crafted World.
Yeah.
Which
was that last year?
It was 2019 March-ish.
Yeah.
It was like the only game they had in the first half of last year.
That's a shame. I thought we were closer to the next Good Feel game, but never mind.
No, but they work relatively quickly, right? I think Woolly World was a 20...
Yeah, because they make the same game twice.
Yeah, that's true. Woolly World was 2015. Maybe they do work quite slowly, because I remember Crafted World being announced and then it taking forever for it to come out. Or maybe that was Woolly World being announced and then it took forever for that game to come out.
Woolly World, like 2015?
Maybe.
Yeah.
But now they've done 2 Yoshi games, I think Nintendo can give them a different franchise, right? Like, I feel like it's around the corner, so we'll see.
I think Wario and DK are due.
Yes, they are. So hopefully we'll see them very soon. But yeah,
Our next email is from Beking, who's from Sweden, who says, "Hey guys, I know you both are very into different types of food. I mean, you did a whole episode about it on Patreon. I was wondering what are some of your favorite depictions of food in a game? It can be how accurate it looks or sounds, or it can maybe have something to do with how it ties into the story or a game mechanic. I'm looking forward to your discussion and hope that I'm not stuck somewhere hungry and not able to eat whilst listening to you tackling this topic. Greetings from Sweden."
Well, bad luck, BK, because we're just going to talk about all the juiciest foods you ever laid your eyes upon, ever heard about. There's lots of food in video games. Well, when I think of food, in media generally, this isn't video game related, but maybe it is. I don't know if there's a video game of this anime. The first thing that comes to my mind is Food Wars, the anime, when I think of depictions of food in media, because it might be the best looking food I have seen in any form that isn't actually real food. It's just astonishing, and I can't watch that show without having something to eat afterwards, because otherwise I lose my goddamn mind, because it's just ridiculous.
Do you have good access to some high quality Japanese food after watching that?
No, not always, which is the problem, which is probably why I'm not caught up on it yet. I'm behind, season 4 or whatever. Got to catch up on Food Wars, but my god, like, the way that they make meat look, like the meltiness of meat and like softness of like Wagyu beef, Jesus, never have I seen food look so good in a media property. So that's not video games, but I just wanted to mention that at the top. If you ever feel like you're hungry, do not watch Food Wars. It's a bad idea. It's a very bad idea, because it's fantastic. The other one for video games, the one that comes to mind, which I've not played the game, I'm hoping to. By the way, okay, I just side tangent here. So you know how I couldn't play Final Fantasy 15 on my Game Pass because it wasn't booting, whatever, and I re-downloaded it like 3 times? Mm-hmm. When I was playing Streets of Rage 4 on my laptop, the exact same thing was happening, and I was like, for fuck's sake, I can't get it to play. And so I googled if people are having the same problem, and I found a forum thread or a Reddit post where people are having the exact same problem, where it come up with this black box and it wouldn't load up. And their solution was to go back into the Game Pass app and then keep clicking the play button just endlessly, and then it would load up, because it was having this issue where the Xbox Game Pass needs to sync to its servers or whatever, and that box wasn't popping up, and so you have to keep just mashing the button, and it fucking worked. And I was like, this is lunacy. Like, how has this bug not been fixed yet? Anyway, all that to say that I am going to re-download Final Fantasy 15 and try that tactic again, and hopefully it will work this time on my PC.
Solid tactic, I like it.
Anyway, back to the point of food. Final Fantasy 15 has some of the best looking food I've ever fucking seen in a game, and I've not played it yet, but looking at screenshots of that thing and looking online and just seeing, I think is it not Prompto, Ignis? I can't remember. It's the one who has glasses. He's the guy who does the cooking for the group of the 4 boys, and all that food is just astonishing.
Are they just these cutscenes, or are they healing your characters? Or
I think there are cutscenes, and you do eat at your camp or whatever, and you do see the full plate, right. Or you can maybe go to a restaurant and you see the full plate laid out before you. But it's just like this glossy like sheen, and just it just looks so well done. Some of the best food I've ever seen.
Is that a theme between Food Wars and Final Fantasy? Is that these Japanese depictions, they like their food glossy?
I think so. I think you're right. There might be something
the thing
to
is,
do
like,
with that.
Wagyu beef and say like a fatty tuna, to represent like the fattiness of them, in reality they probably would be a bit moist and have that sheen. So maybe it's like, that kind of that link.
Did you notice in Japan when you went any food that looked more shiny or its presentation?
Always, because a big feature of just eating out is that food places will almost like, I think it happens more in places like Osaka and Tokyo, but it's like they will put plastic food out of their meals at the front, and this is like a big thing in Japan, is like plastic food, and that's how they demonstrate like what dishes are available, and this makes it very easy as an English speaker, because then there was a couple of times where the waiter would literally lead us to the front of the shop and we just pointed at the plastic food that we wanted, which is really useful. Otherwise, yes. So as a result, because it's plastic, I should say, it is incredibly glossy and very shiny. And does that link? So my point is, like, I think that the stereotype in Japan of like nice looking food is glossy, and in relation to that, it's often because it's depicted using plastic.
That makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't imagine that the food that, as being presented in these different things are covered in plastic, but maybe that's just the perception that has kind of leaked through, maybe. I don't know. Interesting stuff nonetheless. Any big examples of good-looking food for you, Bally? Because I've got some other examples of, like, good-looking food, but also food there's good eating sounds. I've got some examples and some other stuff like that.
Food that, in terms of resolution, looks unbelievable, and also in terms of story is very much what the character you're playing as would want. Would be the burritos in Last of Us Part 2, which the internet has gone wild over. And I'm not going to give the specific story moment when or how it happens, but it's very much like, God, you know what you need in this world? A burrito. And like, there's something, I love burritos. I can't say I've like looked for really high quality burritos in enough places to say that I've had very good burritos, but certainly there's like places in London and Edinburgh where I was, I really want a burrito. Like, they're just a really nice, semi-healthy but also very fulfilling, often spicy lunch that I love burritos, and seeing one depicted in that game was very cool. And obviously everyone's talked about how good looking Last of Us Part 2 is, and the burrito is no different.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I wish I would be able to zoom in on it a bit more, because you're kind of walking around holding it and eating it, which, fair enough, because that's kind of how that game works. But yeah, I'd like to zoom in on the burrito is what I'm saying here. I like high quality shiny images, which is why the other example of a game I've not played yet, but has incredible looking, let's say, products rather than food, is Death Stranding, and its goddamn Monster Energy cans and shit like that.
Right,
dear lord,
it's a very good looking game, actually. I need to get to Death Stranding at some point. I've decided, just to, everyone talking about the PC game, I've been like, I want to try that.
Do we though? I don't know.
I want to try it. I want to try it.
Maybe now more than ever we do, just because of how it's just the world right now, and it's just crazy that, but also, this game.
For some reason, Kojima thinks that Scotland is America, and I want to explore those highlands. So that looks cool.
Yeah, that's definitely not what America looks like. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, very very similar to Highland kind of geography and architecture, which is neat. Some other ones I would say, which I'm surprised you haven't brought up, Bally. Pikmin. Pikmin is a great example, especially Pikmin 3.
Oh, that is a very good example. Perfect example.
Of just giant fucking food. And obviously it's very much part of the gameplay, but you going and collecting those fruit and bringing them back, they look so good. And they have that sheen to them, like all the grapes like have a bit of kind of shininess off them. Giant apples, like all the pieces of fruit that you collect in Pikmin look great. Sometimes they're like sliced as well, so you can kind of see the inside of them, like a kiwi or an orange or whatever, in slices. And I think Pikmin 3 especially is the best one, just because it looks the best.
The sound design in Pikmin 3, but at the end of the day, because all your fruit that you collect gets juiced and turns into juice.
Yes.
And the sound design, it's like this glugging sound.
Yeah,
just kind of like the way that they'll like suck the fruit juice. Oh, it just sounds so good.
That is a good example as well. I didn't think about that, but yes, the end of the day juice collection is very satisfying. In terms of sounds as well, I like the Minecraft eating sound when you eat in Minecraft, and the kind of chewy crunchiness of it. It's pretty good. Like, there are all these people out there who don't like to hear people eat, and I've never understood that. I'm like, it just doesn't bother me. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird, but I've never been bothered by sounds of people eating, but for some reason people get very put off by it, which is why whenever people eat on podcasts, people complain about it, and I'm like, whatever, like, just, it's food, who cares? But anyway, I like, maybe that informs why I think the Minecraft eating sound is good, because I like eating sounds. One that is more low-key, that every time I look at the food, I'm like, I don't want to eat this because it looks really nice, and even though it's going to help me in the game, like mechanically, is Stardew Valley. The sprite work on some of those, like the baguette or like some of the veg salad, things like that, I'm always like, oh, it looks so nice in my inventory, I don't want to eat it because then it'll disappear, but it's also satisfying to eat because then you get your energy up and then you're ready to go into the mines again and stuff like that. Stardew Valley has very good food sprites that are great.
One game that I love the whole food element because of the way it's an event. It's a really positive experience. It allows you to experiment and do all sorts of things. It's obviously Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
I love that. First of all, the food at the end can look really impressive. Looks really nice. But just the music and the happy process of like these cooking sounds of like pots and pans smashing each other and things. It's just a really great, pleasing process, which I think works so well in an open world game like that, where yes, sometimes you will like have really low health and you will need to like stock up, and it's a rather than just going to a shop and buying stuff that will heal you or something like an RPG or whatever, the process of like actually cooking and experimenting with and all the whole sort of mechanics of the red hearts and the yellow hearts and this sort of thing, and sort of the immunity to stuff like cold and fire and heat and sun, whatever. It's very cool that it's all integrated into this one event that I just think that obviously a ton of polish went into that whole experience. Both mechanically, the fact it's so positive, and that, you know, everyone made loads of videos when that came out. Everyone loved that sound. It was just so great.
Yeah, I love cooking in Breath of the Wild. I think one of my favorite aspects is you literally hold all the food in your hand. So you like put it all into Link's hands and then you just drop it into the pot. I wish you were able to see the end result, like him actually taking it out and eating it. He kind of just does a generic eating motion, right. Which, you know, it's more convenient. It's more based on the game design, which I actually appreciate a lot more. As opposed to a game like Red Dead, where you like very slowly pick up things and turn them around slowly in your hand and look at them. And did you do any cooking in Red Dead? Because there is stuff in that game as well, where you're over a cook fire and you're trying to roast things and cook things up.
Yeah, I maybe once, but I really can't remember.
I barely did it.
Yeah, that kind of speaks to how frustrating I was finding exploring that world, where I was really there for the story and little else.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And then obviously got to give a shout out to Castlevania and Wall Chicken, just because it's weird, right? Like you hit a block and a random chicken falls down and you just eat it. You don't even question it. It's in a really old decrepit castle. There's moss everywhere. There's probably some bugs crawling around. For God's sake, there's vampires everywhere. But no, Simon's just going to walk over and eat that chicken. And somehow it makes him healthy again. It just fills all his hearts up. The other thing I appreciate about that is like it constantly gets referenced in other games, and then these days they've actually included more accessibility to it, which is, hey, if you're vegan, we can change that to like a salad or something, right? So like instead of the sprite being a chicken, you can change it to something else. I think Bloodstained does this.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure Streets of Rage 4 does it as well, in terms of you get kind of food from the floor as well in Streets of Rage. You can just change what that looks like, what the sprite is for it. So if you want the vegan option or you want the vegetarian option, you can have that instead, which I think is just a cool thing that they put in those games. But yeah, I'm all about the wall chicken. It's fun times.
I got a shout out Overcooked.
I was wondering if you're going to bring that up.
I think that, and I actually think Overcooked 2 really stepped up the look of a lot of the dishes, and obviously they made a lot more Japanese style dishes, which I hugely appreciate. Like the sushi just looks very, like almost like glistening that we were talking about. It's like moistened, like ready to go. And some like the dumpling things that you can do, but even like the pizzas and the burgers and stuff like that you're making.
Yeah, I was going to say the burgers look really nice in Overcooked.
They look really good, and just I think it's almost there's something intrinsic to watching it being prepared and seeing it cooked in like the burger pate in a frying pan, for example, and then seeing it served and the lettuce chopped and the tomato chopped and then all of that on a burger in a bun. That whole process almost makes the final product even more appealing, where you're like, I know what's gone into that, I worked on it, and it feels like, well, you're not obviously eating it, you're serving it because it's overcooked, but like I think it makes the food look more appetizing by the fact that you've been working on it so hard.
Yeah, totally. You get the satisfaction there, which is good.
Yeah.
Cool. There's probably other food games, but I can't think of any at the moment. But those are the ones that came to my mind. So yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your question, Beaking. It's hugely appreciated. And thank you to everyone else for sending in. And yeah, we've got another few lined up for the following week, so look forward to that. Thank you for sending them in. If you would like to send in an email, please send it to thisnintendolife@gmail.com. That is thisnintendolife gmail.com. We would really appreciate it. But that's what we've got time for in the second segment. Join us after the break for part 3.
All right, folks, welcome back to the third and final part of today's show, in which we are going to be taking a topic from Patreon. Bally, we have our $5 tier now, where people can suggest on Patreon topics for the show. So what do we have today?
Well, today, Acerbis kindly suggested this topic, which is, Acerbis says, one too many tea tables have been upended and Nintendo is being split into 2 companies. As the leaders of these 2 factions, you must draft the Nintendo franchises you wish to retain. Which franchises do you have to snap up first? What franchises with some hidden potential can you pick up in the later rounds? What success means is up to you.
Very good. So I wanted to add a bit of stakes to this. We haven't had a bet on this of like what we'd have to do, who wins or whatever, but my idea would be, and we can figure out like that in the remaining however long, because my idea is over the next 3 years, and we'll eventually come back to this, we get points depending on how many games get announced for whatever franchises we have, right? So if I choose Zelda and 6 Zelda games get announced, that's 6 points for me. If Bally chooses Mario and 7 Mario games get announced, that's 7 points for him. And we've got them into different like subcategories as well, of like 2D and 3D and things like that, but I thought it would be fun to add stakes so that we can kind of figure out and maybe choose in a different way of like, what are the franchises that are going to be the most important to Nintendo in the next few years, and how many games are they going to make in these franchises will decide like maybe what we're choosing first and things like that. So people will just have to remind us in 3 years' time to come back in July of 2023 and see who won, and then we'll figure out what the loser/winner has to do or whatever. I'm sure we can come up with some fun thing, like making the other person play a game or something like that. So
that's always a good one.
It was a good one. Yeah.
But if Nintendo split in 2,
yes,
would your company be called Nin or Tendo? Because in true Square Enix fashion, I think we should split the name.
Just split the name in half. I was thinking Ninten and Endo, basically.
Ninten and Endo.
Because Ninten was the name of the main character in the first Mother game, right? Like he's called right. Ninten. So Ninten and Endo, I think would be quite good. Do you mind which you go as? I don't mind.
I'm going to be Endo.
You're gonna be Endo. The Endo. I'll be Ninten.
It's like who was the founder of Sega, and then he just named Sega after himself.
I don't know. I have no idea.
I'm merging my name into the name of the company.
Okay.
And so my company's going to be called Baliendo.
Okay, that sounds good to me. So we have a list. Should we read down the list of all the options we have?
I can go through it pretty quickly.
We've gone some niche things as well, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think if we're just wallowing around in niche upon niche by the end, we can probably just say let's just stop.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll run down this list very quickly then. So we split 2D Mario and 3D Mario. So 2D Mario, 3D Mario, 2D Zelda, 3D Zelda, Splatoon, 2D Metroid, 3D Metroid, F-Zero, Wave Race, Donkey Kong Country, Kirby, Mario Sports, Mario Kart, Mother, Xenoblade, Pikmin, Fire Emblem, Animal Crossing, Pokemon, Luigi's Mansion, Super Smash Bros., Yoshi, Star Fox, Kid Icarus, WarioWare, with Rhythm Heaven, Punch-Out, Advance Wars, Paper Mario, Dylan's Rolling Western, Box Boy, Pilot Wings, Steel Diver, Rusty's Real Deal Baseball, the Wii series, the Nintendo series, Brain Training, Mario and Luigi, Mario Party, 1080, Picross, Golden Sun, Dr. Mario, Uendan, Cruisin', Clubhouse Games, Chibi Robo, Labo, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, Pushmo, Sin and Punishment, Style Savvy, and Fossil Fighters.
We can really get into the dregs at the end there, which is fun. I would argue to just make Donkey Kong Country just Donkey Kong, because what if there's a 3D Donkey Kong game that gets announced?
Let's do that.
Yeah, so let's just do generic Donkey Kong, which covers a few bases.
I mean, I still think they might call it Donkey Kong Country.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
We don't know. Maybe a reboot, Donkey Kong Country, like rebooting the
So
franchise.
we're saying every game announced in the broad category we've listed, you get a 1 point for.
Yes, you get 1 point for basically.
Okay.
So who wants to go first? Shall we flip? Is there any coin to flip? I don't know. How do you want to do this?
I don't know. I don't have a coin in front of me. You can go first.
I'll go first because my first pick is Kirby. I am willing to bet there will be at least 4 Kirby games announced in the next few years. So I'm going to take Kirby straight away because he is Nintendo's most prolific character in terms of his appearances, and I feel like that is a safe, solid bet. So I would like to take Kirby.
Okay. In line with that logic, I'm actually going to take Mario Sports. Because
that's a good category to take because there's lots of different ones.
It's vague. It covers, so that's everything not including party and kart, we've said. So golf, tennis, football, counts.
All the different things.
Yeah.
So now I'm trying to think of what other franchises here could potentially spawn multiple game announcements in the next 3 years. It's probably unlikely, obviously, but I think, actually, this is the obvious one, and this is going to pay dividends for me. I'm going to take Pokemon. Because there are so many bullshit mobile games that get announced for Pokemon.
I just want to clarify Pokemon. I think we should have split Pokemon into spin-offs and main line.
Okay.
I agree, but I'm doing this retrospectively.
Are you going to tell me that I'm not going to be allowed to have Pokemon Party Blast on phones as a point?
Yeah, we could do another category, and I promise I won't pick it next round. Called Pokemon spin-offs.
That's fine. We can just get rid of. We can just not count all the mobile random Pokemon games. Let's just.
But what about new Pokemon Snap?
Yeah, Pokemon Snap would count, and I would say also Let's Go counts, mainline console style Pokemon games.
Okay.
Cool.
I think the rule could be as long as it's not a mobile, it counts.
Yeah, okay.
Fair enough. Okay, right. I'm going to go for Fire Emblem. Because
that's a good one, yeah.
We've basically had one every 3 years, every other year almost.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Fire Emblem floating around.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that they're going to do a partnership with Bandai Namco to make a Fire Emblem fighting game sometime soon, so...
I guess that counts.
That could add as an extra game added on. I'm sure there will be at least one announced in the next 3 years.
Yes.
So Fire Emblem is a really solid choice. Now we're getting down to the ones where probably only one game will get announced in the next 3 years. And I'm wondering about Smash Brothers is definitely not. So I'm just not going to touch Smash Brothers at the moment. It might be... DLC doesn't really count, does it? Because that's just a bit of a cheat. We already know that DLC
we're
is
saying
coming.
main games on non-mobile devices.
Yeah. I am going to, in that case... and some of these are... I don't know what you want to do about some of these games that are clearly dead and are never going to come back, like the Wii series. I don't know if they're going to do a Wii game on a Switch,
Well, we'll just end the game when everything left looks dead, basically,
okay,
I think.
All right,
That's what we'll do.
Fair enough. I don't know if you just want clout points for what are the coolest things that you could choose as bonus at the end, but
we can each pick 5 just crazy ones and then look back and be like, hey, I got it.
For sure. I am going to go. This is getting tricky now. I'm going to just go with. I'm going to go with 2D Metroid. I'm going to take 2D Metroid.
Whoa,
I believe
Metroid
in it.
Before Mario or Zelda. That is bold.
Well, the thing is,
we are due.
Yeah, we are definitely we're owed one, and I think that given the fact that we've already got a 3D Zelda announced, I don't know if that counts. Do we count that because that's already announced?
Yeah, because it's coming out in the next 3 years. So anything that's coming out or will be announced in the next 3 years, we're going to count.
Okay, so you can just get a bonus, easy, guaranteed point.
3D Zelda is literally going to guaranteed to be 1 point. And
yes, it's guaranteed 1 point.
Nothing more unless something gets announced. But
2D Mario is a weird one just because Mario Maker recently came out, and 3D Mario, I think Odyssey 2 is coming, but that's probably just going to be 1 point, I feel. So.
Okay. I'm going to go with 2D Zelda.
Yeah, I mean, they did do the remake, but we're due an original.
I think we're probably going to get an original one, and
maybe just at the tail end of this, like probably 2023, early 2023, they'll announce a new 2D Zelda.
Yeah.
So you might scrape in at the end there and get one. I think we're definitely going to get a spin-off / sequel / Splatoon franchise game. I think we need another one of those. So I'm going to take Splatoon. It's maybe a little risky, but it has been 3 years since Splatoon 2 came out. There is a strong brand for them. They want to continue that strength. Whether it's Splatoon 3 or whether it's a spin-off title, I feel strongly that we're going to get some more Splatoon in the next 3 years, minimum. So I'm going to go with Splatoon.
I think I'm just going to take the boring point and take 3D Zelda for now.
Well, with both Zeldas, they're 2D and 3D. That's quite solid across the board, to be honest with you.
More or less, something Zelda-related comes out roughly once a year. I mean, this year is going to be an exception to that rule, but it happens a lot.
Maybe I'm being bold, but I'm going to take 3D Metroid because Metroid Prime 4, if it's not out by 2023, at least it's announced. So technically it still gives me a point, even if it doesn't come out. It's technically still announced at the current moment. So you're taking both the Zeldas, I'm taking both the Metroids.
Okay.
That's how it's going.
I'm going to take Mario Kart.
See, this is the one where I wasn't sure about whether I was going to take Mario Kart or not, because I'm just not confident they're doing another Mario Kart this generation. It's a tricky one.
I am confident they will, just because... Oh, sorry, mother's gone into...
That's all right. We've got some Google Docs fun happening here.
Google Docs fun, great to listen to. Yeah, I think Mario Kart is going to come. There's going to be another Mario Kart on Switch. I think it will be announced at least in the next 3 years.
Great. I'm going to go with my heart, not my head, even though my head is probably the same. Xenoblade is definitely getting a new announcement. And the bonus with Xenoblade is I feel, because of the way things have been happening, is they can do a Xenoblade 3, and then they can do a Torn of the Golden Country style thing, and that counts as a separate game. So I could get 2 Xenoblades for 1 here, potentially. That's my thinking.
It will count as a separate game if it's like Torn. It won't if it's like the epilogue, yeah.
The epilogue from the deluxe, yes, yeah.
I hate to say it, I'm going to take Yoshi.
Yeah,
Yoshi always bloody comes out.
It's a good call. Like, similar to Kirby, Yoshi is pretty strong.
Yeah.
I would say Kirby and Pokemon are probably the 2 top tier picks in this, and I'm glad I got them both.
How weird does it sound to say that Kirby's already had a 2D game on Switch? It just feels like the most forgettable kind of thing.
Yeah. It's real weird. That's just how the world is at the moment with Nintendo. They just love those happy-go-lucky puffballs and dinosaurs. They're their favorite. Now, this is getting tricky because there's definitely we're in the.
I think there's some pretty
area.
gimme ones floating around.
Probably, yeah. You know what? I'll just take 3D Mario. Because we're gonna get an Odyssey 2. Like, I
strongly believe that.
Yeah.
I'll take 2D Mario. I think it's very much due.
And are we counting like a re-release like New Super Mario Brothers U as a game? I guess we do because it was a release.
If it's a new release, yeah.
Yeah.
I think remakes or remasters, it has to be like, it can't just be a re-release like Metroid Prime Trilogy. It needs to be Link's Awakening or something. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to take Pikmin because I believe Pikmin.
That's a good one. I
believe it's coming.
Good chance.
There will be an announcement for Pikmin in the next 3 years. I mean, it's been like 5 years since that Miyamoto quote of Pikmin 3 and 4 is almost done.
Sounds like a safe pick now. In 3 years' time, we're going to laugh at these lists.
Yeah, we are, definitely.
I'm going to take Donkey Kong.
That's a good one.
I think he's fairly due as well.
And even if it's not a country game, there could be a brand new style of DK, reboot DK.
What if they do a whole game based on that Nintendo Land game?
Oh yeah, definitely love it. That's actually the best Nintendo Land game. Like, not even a word of a lie. Single player wise, at least.
I'll give you that single player. Definitely not a rule.
Yeah, probably not. Oh, we're getting to some of these now, which I'm like, will it ever come back?
Everything's a bit quirky, or it's already happened.
Yes. So the thing with Paper Mario is like obviously not, because they literally just put one out.
Yeah,
literally
not feeling it
this week. So that's probably out of the running. I am going to say of these ones, Star Fox is actually probably the most likely. I'm going to take Star Fox. Because Animal Crossing just came out. They're not going to do another one next 3 years. Luigi's Mansion came out last year. I don't think that's a quick enough turnaround for a fourth Luigi's Mansion game. And Smash Brothers is just eternal for the moment, so it's not going to get a new one.
Yeah, Star Fox feels like the most dead franchise any of us have picked so far, so that's definitely an interesting one. I'm going to take... I'm going to take WarioWare. I know we just had that...
nice pick.
I know we just had that 3DS thing, WarioWare Gold, but I think it's got to have its time on Switch probably next 3 years.
You would hope.
Yeah.
You'd think that would be a thing. I am really skeptical about a lot of these ever getting another announcement. However, of the dead franchises, my faith is probably quite high in Punch-Out. It's been almost 10 years. I think that it's... The only conflicting thing here is ARMS, right? ARMS is the problem. Maybe we should put ARMS on this list. I forgot about that. Let's put ARMS on this list. That's a Nintendo franchise.
Yeah,
and now you're probably going to take it.
I don't know about that.
I feel like ARMS is actually quite likely. Punch-Out is like similar-ish to ARMS, but it's totally a different game. So it's just whether or not Nintendo want to bring it back from the dead again.
I don't know if they're comfortable doing the stereotypes in Punch-Out. I know we've mentioned it on the show before. I think there's probably ways around it. I'm not sure if Nintendo's the company I have faith in working that out.
Yeah, I think they can just do a complete reboot of Punch-Out and just change the way that they approach those types of things. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think a pretty simple one is Mario Party. Like, I think...
Oh, shit, I should have taken...
It normally
you know what? They're going to announce like
multiple-
fucking 5 Mario Parties in the next 3 years, let's be honest.
So I'm pretty comfortable with Mario Party.
I'm surprised I didn't take that earlier. That's an obvious gimme. Very obvious. I'll take ARMS. Having just added it, I'll take Punch-Out and ARMS just to cover my bases, make sure. Because, with Min Min being announced for Smash Brothers and being in there, it doesn't signal anything necessarily, but it tells you Nintendo are still thinking about ARMS. They're still considering it as a property.
Yeah.
So.
I'm going to take Pilot Wings.
Okay.
Don't have much
It's
reasoning.
been a while. No,
It's been a while.
Bally, I'm going to take Pilot Wings. I don't know why, because I like Pilot Wings, pretty much.
I think Pilot Wings could sell very well on Switch, like many games do sell well on Switch. I think it's aimed at quite a wide audience. It's a very family-friendly game. It's a really relaxing time, and it's due.
I'm going to make a bold move here, Bally. I don't know if you've seen the rumours floating around of Twitter handles being taken for the Super Mario 35th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo also registered a Twitter account for F-Zero JP.
Wow.
So... That 100%, that 100% could be, hey, we're just taking the name because we need it for, copyright issues and things like that. We just want to own the name F-Zero JP on Twitter. But where there's smoke, there's fire. If there's a Super Mario 35th Twitter account that was created in March, there was also an F-Zero one created in March. I've got a hope, Bally, for you at least, that it's coming. So I'm gonna put F-Zero on my list.
I hope so.
I'm gonna do it.
The game we're about to play, Nintendogs plus Cats. I'm going to take Nintendogs. I think that's another...
You know what I'm so shocked by is that Nintendo haven't put that on mobile yet. I am absolutely bewildered that they haven't done that as one of their mobile games.
I think there's a decent chance of something Nintendogs related coming to Switch, honestly. It does have that touch screen.
It does, and it also has motion controls, so you can throw
frisbees
have motion
and
controls.
things. Get some HD puppies on the go.
Yeah. How does it feel for a puppy to lick you? Well, hold those Joy-Cons, son. Find out. We'll see. Okay. We're getting down here to like
getting harder.
Dream territory. I'm gonna go dream big, dream hard, and yes, Mario Golf is gonna get announced. You're gonna get a point for that, I guarantee it. But after that gets released in say early 2021, we're gonna get to early 2023. Golden Sun, Camelot, we're back, baby. Let's do it. Golden Sun, I believe. I'm going to take that.
I'm going to take Rhythm Heaven.
Yeah, it's a good one. Even if it's a collection, I would say that counts, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. It's been a while since Megamix on 3DS, and it's a series that has got to come to Switch at some point.
Yeah, sure. It definitely does. I am going to go with the weird pick. I'm going to take Dylan's Rolling Western, because it's one of those series that they don't sell, but for some reason Nintendo keeps making those games, and
Are there two games?
There's three, I think.
Okay.
Maybe four, but they're mainly 3DS things, which is why I'm a little skeptical about it, because I don't know if it would make the transition to Switch, if it's even worth putting it on Switch. But there's got to be a Dylan game coming to Switch, right? Like at some point in the next 3 years. I don't know, that they kind of feel like they really like that character for no discernible reason, because he's not made any money for them, but, you know.
I'm going to take one of your favourite franchises, MBZ, Mario vs. Donkey Kong.
Oh, God. Sucks so much.
Certainly during the 3DS era, Nintendo kind of returned to it a few times. That was
like the
a
minis, right?
game.
The mini March of the Minis or something like that.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
DS.
There was a
Wii
U game definitely that they did. With
yeah,
DK.
I mean, I don't think it sells particularly well, but they do like returning to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if something along those lines happened to come to Switch.
Okay, then I am going to take. Might be a bit risky one, but I'm going to take Labo because I think they still have one more hurrah in Labo. I think there's going to be another set of kits coming out. And I think even if it's just some random weird thing, Labo might be the place where they are kind of focusing. You know what we should have added here? Ring Fit Adventure, honestly.
Ring Fit Adventure.
I feel like they're going to make another one of those because that has been very successful. And if you take it now, Bally, then god damn you, but I'll allow it.
I'm going to go for for Clubhouse Games, because I think they just throw out another pack of games.
You don't think they'll just do DLC for the current one?
They might.
I feel like that's kind of how it's going to go.
They might
do. And yeah, I'm going to take Ring Fit Adventure. I'm going to take it because I came up with it and I thought it was a good one, so I'm going to take it. The way that thing is selling, man, like Jesus, you'd be stupid not to take Ring Fit.
Shot in the Dark, going for Kid Icarus.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that Sakurai is eternally bound to make Smash Brothers for the rest of his life, and I don't know that any other person would work on it.
The DLC for Ultimate will wrap up in the next year and a bit.
Until Nintendo are like, let's do round 3 to make more money.
I do think a round 3 is highly likely, but even if he does a round 3 and has a year off, he might announce a Kid Icarus
by 2023, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, I think maybe we can start wrapping up because I feel like
but there's a few more I want.
Okay, there's a few more you want. Okay, all right. I will take. You know what? Does Mother 3 count if they announce Mother 3 for Switch? Because they're never going to make another Mother game. Shigesato Itoi has said explicitly he's never making another Mother game. Come on.
Yeah, you can have Mother 3, fine.
Yeah, let's take Mother 3.
Let's will it into existence.
Let's will it. Look, I mean, if I didn't do it, it would be a crime.
I'm going to take Picross. Surprised it's not gone yet.
Oh, shit, you're right. That's God, I should have taken...
I might get more than 1 point for that.
They could have announced like 3 Picross games, for God's sake. I'm an idiot. God damn it.
That's a cheap one.
That is a cheap one, but I didn't see it. I didn't.
I thought you were going to take it there and then you were like, actually, I'll take Mother.
Yeah, wow. Real smart of me. Just all the brains in the family on my side. Some of these are just dead, right? Like Mario and Luigi, Alpha Dream doesn't exist anymore. They went bankrupt.
What if Mario and Luigi becomes the route that Nintendo actually do a Mario RPG, you know?
They could. The thing is, I'm sure they own the rights to make more of those games. It's just the company they were using doesn't exist anymore. So who do they give it to? And do they want to
give it to someone? But yeah,
they can. But like, there's limited space for development. I don't know. I'll take Box Boy because I thought Box Boy. They said bye Box Boy, but that was a lie because Box Boy plus Box Girl happened. So I'm sure they'll do another one. Box Boy plus Box Girl 2. Box Boy is a safe bet, I'd say.
I'm gonna take Brain Training.
Didn't they just announce one recently? I feel like there was one that got announced for Switch.
Well, I'll get a point then, won't I, when it comes out?
Well, yeah, maybe it already came out. I'm not sure.
It might have already come out.
Haven't checked that. Yeah, I'm gonna go Style Savvy. It's a 3DS franchise that I think could make its way over. Maybe it has already. I don't know. I don't pay attention to Style Savvy at all, but people seem to love that series. People seem to love it.
I'm going to Dr. Mario. Like, I agree. I know he's just had like a mobile thing that was crap, but
continues to be crap.
continues to be crap.
Continues to just create characters who are nonsense.
Yeah, but I do think that they'll throw Dr. Mario in something. They'll theme a Dr. Mario game and put it out there on Switch at some point, even if it is a cheaper game.
Yeah. So these big games, like, I'll take Luigi's Mansion, I think, just because...
I was going to go for that, yeah. I think 3
potentially...
sold well enough where I think they're like, let's get on with 4,
Yeah.
I am struggling now.
Yeah. I think we're at the point where either it's come out too
let's
recently...
take Advance Wars. Come on, let's do it.
All right, you've got to do it, Bally.
Well.
You've got to believe in the heart of the cards.
It's got to come. There we go. It's happening now.
Great. And then... Yeah, I think the last one I would say is probably Pushmo.
I was going to take Pushmo.
Well, there you go. I've already stolen it from you.
So now I guess I will Sin and Punishment. I'm going to take...
Look, Greg Leahy was laughing about there'll never be another Sin and Punishment, and lo and behold, they put one out on Wii, so who knows what happens.
Take Wave Race.
Yeah, just take your favourites at the end here.
Yeah.
Great. And yeah, that kind of leaves us...
I'm happy leaving it if we want to. So we're left with Animal Crossing, Super Smash Brothers, Paper Mario, Steel Diver, Rusty's Real Deal Baseball, Wii Series, Mario and Luigi, 1080, Uendan, Cruisin', Chibi Robo, Sin and Punishment, Fossil Fighters.
I think there is close to a 0% chance that new games for all of those get announced.
Well, why don't we leave that list with our lists and just make sure that no games come out in those franchises? Just
sure. And then we can maybe get minus points for being idiots and not taking them when we should have done.
Do you want to run through your list of games for your mini Nintendo company?
Okay, so my company Ninten has a really exciting portfolio. We've got Kirby and Pokemon, 2D Metroid, 3D Metroid, Splatoon, Xenoblade, 3D Mario, Pikmin, Star Fox, Punch-Out, ARMS, F-Zero, Golden Sun, Dylan's Rolling Western, Labo, Ring Fit Adventure, Mother, Box Boy, Style Savvy, Luigi's Mansion, and Pushmo.
That's a nice company right there.
It's really good, yeah.
Ones. I've got Mario Sports, Fire Emblem, 2D Zelda, 3D Zelda, Mario Kart, Yoshi, 2D Mario, Donkey Kong, WarioWare, Mario Party, Pilot Wings, Nintendogs, Rhythm Heaven, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, Clubhouse Games, Kid Icarus, Picross, Brain Training, Dr. Mario, Advance Wars, and Wave Race.
It's pretty all around. I think we've got some distinctive companies. I would say that overall I'm pretty happy.
I think we're going to get like 5 points each, and that's that.
Looking at both these lineups maybe is an interesting final thing. Who do you think would make the more money? Which company would be the most financially successful out of these two companies?
I would go with myself.
Okay.
Because of Fire Emblem, Mario Kart, 3D Zelda, and I guess 2D Zelda, Pilot. I don't know, not Pilot Wings. Why is it Pilot Wings? 2D Zelda. Those are my top 4, I guess.
I would say my company would be the most financially successful because I have Pokemon, so nothing else matters. Basically, is how I'd say. But hey, there you go.
Financially successful in the next 3 years. Yeah, I agree, because there'll probably be multiple Pokemon games and they'll sell more. Yes. I think the one-off Mario Kart game, if we get it, will obviously do gangbusters, but I agree that's one game versus potentially 3 Pokemon games.
Yes. But also Pokemon as a media franchise is the most profitable.
Yeah, you're going to get Detective
history
Pikachu
of the universe
2 or something. Some film will boost you.
Yeah. Great. Well, that was fun. We have 2 separate entities, 2 Nintendo companies, and we will see in, say, 3 years' time. So in the middle of July 2023, someone remind us that we did this, and we'll revisit our lists and see how well we did, how many points we got, and what the challenge/forfeit will have to be for the losing person. It'll be a fun time.
Very good.
But that is going to wrap us up for today. Thanks everybody for listening. If you would like to be a patron who can submit a topic just like Acerbis did this week, you can head over to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, where you can do that for $5 a month. You can, of course, check out all the new shows that we are doing in terms of we are doing our This Nintendo Life, and we then have bonus bits going up as well. So to have a look over there, check out and see what you like. And we have some patrons to thank as well, Bally.
Yes, thank you to our $10 tier patrons. They are Atari Alex, Thomas, Matthew, and my fiancée Caroline. Thank you for your $10 tier support. And yeah, thank you for all the new patrons who have, had a look at our new tiers, thought, hey, I want to jump on that and try out our new Patreon show. This Nintendo Life episode 1 is already out, so hopefully people enjoyed that. And yeah, we've got lots more shows to come. We've got that Xbox event that I think we're keen to cover as well. So that will go on that Nintendo Life feed as well.
Yes, absolutely. Great. You can also find this show all over the place on the internet. And you can find us all over the place as well. I mainly live on Twitter for most of my days. And I tweet about, I don't know, just whatever is happening, things, life, everything going on, telling people to, I don't know, what is
you
Twitter's
tweeted,
thing?
I want to see an end to user score reviews.
I did,
that was
yeah.
a tweet you did.
Well, I mean, Metacritic was like, what if we do this innovative thing of we'll just not let people review it day one to stop review bombing, as if that's going to change for day two at all. Like, just get rid of them altogether, because all Metacritic is like people going, this is 1 out of 10, I hate it, or this is 10 out of 10, my favorite.
Yeah, I agree. User scores have very little useful information. One thing I do think is mildly interesting is when a game does get review bombed on day one, and then watching the score gradually improve as more people beat the game and say, hey, this is actually really good or something. That's mildly interesting, as much as I agree user scores are kind of pointless.
Yeah. So you can find me at Lord NBZ. Where can they find you, Bally?
Find me on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91.
Great. You can find the podcast Twitter at TNL Podcast. That gives you links to Discord, YouTube, all the other places that we are and exist on the internet. And you can find the show in various places. You can find us on Spotify, on Stitcher, on Apple Podcasts, any podcasting app that you have. You just look up This Nintendo Life and you should find us, download us, subscribe to us, all that good stuff. You can review us on iTunes as well. It'd be very nice to get some more of those going. And you obviously will be able to participate in our Backlog Club when that happens. And that is going to happen for the next two shows. 2 shows from now is when it's going to be, which will be the 17th of August, which is when it goes live. But of course, we'll like to see your emails before then. So send your emails to this email address that Bally will tell you right now. Email
thisnintendolife@gmail.com. That is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. We want all your puppy and kitten thoughts.
Yes, all your ideas and opinions about Nintendo's plus cats, and we'll get playing that very soon. Great, that's going to close us out, everybody. Thanks everybody for listening and doing stuff. I don't know. Who knows how to end shows these days? You just ramble on until you find a natural stopping point, and then it's the end. And then I ask Bally to say something, and he never has anything insightful to say, and it's always just.
I'm just looking forward to doing this bonus bits at the end of the show. That's what I'm looking forward to.
We've got a fun one lined up, so we'll do that. Yes, thanks everybody for listening. We will see you next time. Until then, thank you very much, and bye-bye, folks. The musical interludes used on today's show were Yearnings of Wind from Chrono Trigger, copyright Square Enix 1995, and Ant Kingdom from Bug Fables, copyright Moonsprout Studios 2019.
That's Frog's theme.
Oh, it is, yeah. Didn't even talk about the music. God, that soundtrack is so good.
No. You can put that in the thing.
You want Frog's theme, yeah?
I like Frog's theme, yeah.
All right.
I'd be up for that one.
Sure.
My other favourite theme is the Overworld theme for, I believe it's 600 AD.
Okay.
How does it go? It goes... Wait, I've forgotten how it goes.
Let me
It
see.
goes.
Oh yeah. Da-na-na-na-na, na-na-na-na-na-na, na-na-na-na-na.
Don't think that's it.
That's 600 AD, Yearnings of Wind.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love it.
It's so good. That was like the main Chrono Trigger song.